Ever been in that frustrating or maybe even, hilariously awkward spot where you're trying to describe something and you just can't find that exact word?
Oh, no,
The
absolutely.
one that perfectly captures the nuance, the feeling, the specific shade of meaning you're aiming for?
Mm-hmm.
You pick a word that's almost right, like a close cousin, but it just falls short, leaves your listener a little confused, or worse, completely misinformed.
Yeah,
It's like trying to hit a bullseye with a marshmallow.
it really is. And it's a remarkably common experience, actually. It points to something absolutely fundamental about language. Words are rarely, if ever, truly interchangeable.
Even when they seem like they should be.
Even then, each one carries its own unique baggage of meaning,
Yeah.
its own subtle implication, almost like a specific tone of voice.
And that's precisely why we're doing this deep dive today. Our core material, our guide for this journey, is this linguistic goldmine, Webster's Dictionary of Synonyms and Antonyms.
Oh, yeah, a fantastic resource. Created in cooperation with the editors of Merriam-Webster, no less.
Right. And this isn't just some dusty list you skim through. It's a meticulously crafted guide. It really digs into the precise implications and connotations of words.
It's like having a seasoned linguistic guide, sort of helping you navigate the winding paths of expression.
Exactly. So, our mission today is crystal clear. We want to equip you, our listener, with a sharper linguistic toolkit.
Yeah, we're going to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge from this incredible resource, help you understand the true power of word choice.
Get ready for some serious aha moments about language, hopefully. And in doing so, we hope to help you avoid those common communication pitfalls.
Think of this as a shortcut, maybe, to becoming truly well-informed about the subtle, yet immensely powerful art of expression.
It really does make you look at language differently, doesn't it?
It really does.
Because on the surface, some of these words feel so interchangeable, but I have a feeling we're about to uncover some genuinely fascinating hidden pathways in this familiar garden of words.
We certainly are. And those distinctions, they matter immensely. Precise language isn't just about sounding polished.
No, it's more fundamental than that.
It enhances clarity, significantly reduces ambiguity, and ultimately allows for far more effective communication.
Right, whether you're just chatting or writing an important email for work.
Exactly, or even exploring creative writing. The subtle differences between synonyms shape our understanding of the world, they influence perception, and can even dictate outcomes.
It's about making sure your message lands exactly where and how you intend it, avoiding those misinterpretations.
Maximizing impact, that's the goal.
Okay, let's unpack this. Where should we start? How about something we all encounter, maybe more often than we'd like? Deception.
Ah, deception. A fascinating place to begin.
How do words help us describe the various forms of misleading others? From innocent little ruses to really elaborate impostures.
It's crucial, actually. The words we choose to describe deception, they don't just describe the act. They often reveal something profound about the deceiver's intent and, just as importantly, the victim's state.
Okay, so where do we start?
Let's start with a classic.
Dupe. Dupe. Okay, when I hear dupe, I immediately think of someone being maybe a bit foolish themselves, perhaps easily taken advantage of. Is that fair?
You're right on the money, actually. Dupe really zeroes in on the victim's unwariness.
Unwariness. Okay.
It's about deceiving someone by underhanded means for one's own ends, sure, but the emphasis is strongly on the person being deluded. It highlights their lack of caution or maybe their openness to being caught off guard.
So the focus isn't just on how clever the deceiver was?
Not solely, no. It's also significantly about the victim's susceptibility.
Huh. So when you hear they duped us into buying a lemon of a car, it instantly shifts the focus a bit.
So?
Well, it's not just that they tricked you. It subtly suggests the buyers weren't careful enough, perhaps. Didn't inspect the car properly.
Exactly. It places a spotlight, almost a little bit of the blame, or at least the observation of their state, on the deceived. That's a powerful nuance.
Yeah, it really is.
It highlights a situation where someone is taken advantage of, often due to their trusting nature or maybe just a momentary lapse in vigilance.
Okay, but what happens when that lapse isn't just a single moment? What if it's more like an ingrained tendency?
Yeah, well, that's where gull comes in.
Gull.
Yeah.
Yeah, that always sounds a bit more severe to me. Like you're not just fooled once, but you're really being made a fool of, maybe
So-
repeatedly.
Precisely. Gull stresses credulousness, that readiness to be imposed on or made a fool of.
So similar to dupe, but heavier.
Similar, but it leans even more heavily into the victor's inherent tendency to believe easily, almost to the point of naivete. The focus here is squarely on the victim's gullibility.
Their almost eager willingness to be deceived sometimes.
Sometimes, yes. Time and again, perhaps.
So saying, you are so easily gulled by these contest promoters, that really paints a picture, doesn't it?
It does.
It's not just one misstep. It suggests a pattern, almost a character trait. Someone consistently falling for, I don't know, quick money schemes or deceptive promises.
That's a key distinction. While dupe might describe an isolated incident where someone's caught off guard, gull often suggests a pattern.
Like a chronic vulnerability.
Exactly, almost a personality trait of being overly credulous. It can be more critical of the victim, implying a chronic lack of discernment.
And in today's world, with so much information flying around, clickbait, misinformation, understanding gull becomes even more vital, I think. How susceptible are we to being gulled just because we're too ready to believe what scrolls past?
That's a question worth pondering, absolutely.
Okay, moving on there. What about trick? This one feels a bit lighter sometimes, doesn't it? Like a magic trick.
It certainly can. Trick implies an intent to delude by means of a ruse or fraud, but the crucial phrase, as you said, is not always vicious.
Ah, right. Not always vicious.
This shifts the focus firmly to the deceiver's intention and the method used, the ruse, the fraud. It allows for a much broader spectrum of deception.
From malicious.
To genuinely benign, yes.
Like when special effects can trick moviegoers into believing anything.
Exactly. That's a perfectly harmless use of trick. It's designed purely for entertainment.
It's about the cleverness of the ruse, the ingenuity of the artifice. It doesn't necessarily hinge on exploiting someone's unwariness or gullibility.
Right. It actually highlights the skill of the deceiver, in a way. Understanding the trick can reveal the mechanics of illusions or, persuasive techniques. It's about the artifice employed.
But the ethical spectrum is broad.
Very broad. Fun, art, surprise parties, or something much more sinister. It highlights the method more than the impact on the victim, usually.
Okay. And then we have hoax. This word always conjures images of grand, elaborate schemes. Like this isn't just a simple lie, it's a whole performance.
It absolutely should, because hoax implies the contriving of an elaborate or adroit imposture in order to deceive.
Elaborate or adroit imposture.
Okay. This emphasizes the scale, the complexity, and the cleverness of the deception. It's a much grander, more artful deception, often with a public dimension, designed to fool a mass audience.
The classic example being Orson Welles. Hoaxed the public by broadcasting news of a Martian invasion.
The perfect example.
That's not just a simple trick for entertainment. It's a full-blown production designed to fool an entire society.
It speaks to a level of sophistication, planning, and sheer audaciousness that the other words don't quite capture.
Right.
And large-scale hoaxes can have a profound, even destabilizing impact on public trust and how information spreads.
Yeah, especially now.
They highlight the importance of critical thinking in recognizing such elaborate deceptions, particularly in an era where information spreads like wildfire and can be fabricated with unsettling ease.
So really understanding these words, dupe, gull, trick, and hoax, it isn't just about expanding your vocabulary.
No, it's like gaining X-ray vision for intent. Next time you encounter a story of deception, you can ask yourself, is the focus on the victim's own slip-up, that's dupe or gull?
Oh,
Is it about the deceiver's clever method, that's trick?
right.
Or is it the sheer public theatricality of the lie that points to hoax?
That framework instantly sharpens your critical lens on the narrative. That's fascinating. It really arms you with a better defense against being fooled and, well, a more precise way to describe when others are fooled.
Exactly.
Now, from the mechanics of deception, let's explore something different. The intricacies of human emotion. How our language captures its myriad forms.
Ah, yes. Because articulating not just what we feel, but the intensity, the nuance, the underlying cause, that's a true superpower.
It really is.
Let's begin our emotional journey with desire and urgency. These aren't just about wanting something, they reveal the depth and even the anxieties surrounding that want.
It's about how we feel when we want something, not just the wanting itself.
Precisely. So let's start with eager. What's the core of that feeling? What's the energy behind that word?
Eager. It feels positive, energetic, ready to go.
Yes. Eager implies ardor and enthusiasm, and sometimes impatience at delay or restraint. Its antonym is listless.
Ardor and enthusiasm. Okay.
This word focuses on a positive, active anticipation. It's about wanting something so much that you're prepared to get started immediately, almost bursting with energy, full of spirited readiness.
Like being eager to get started on the trip.
Perfect.
You can almost feel the restless excitement in that phrase.
Exactly. It's a very proactive form of desire. Now, avid takes that a step further.
Avid. Stronger. Right?
Stronger. It adds to eager the implication of insatiability or greed. Its antonyms are indifferent or averse. So it's not just wanting, but almost a craving.
So avid suggests a deep, almost consuming desire, something that might be hard to satisfy.
Yes, exactly.
Like young pleasure seekers avid for the next thrill. It's almost like a hunger that's never quite filled, a constant pursuit.
That's a perfect way to put it. It conveys a deeper, more profound level of desire, often with a sense of craving or intense pursuit that can be consuming.
You often hear avid reader or avid collector.
Exactly. It speaks to a deep-seated, almost obsessive interest. Then we have keen.
Keen. For me, that always suggests a shark-focused interest, like a keen eye or a keen intellect. Very perceptive.
Precisely. Keen suggests intensity of interest and quick responsiveness in action.
Quick responsiveness.
It's about a sharp, quick interest, often tied to a particular area, a skill, or a trend. It implies a perceptive and astute engagement with the subject, almost a mental agility in its pursuit.
Like being very keen on the latest styles and fashions. It's not just interested, it's intensely, sharply interested and responsive to it. Always on top of the trends, maybe.
Yes, it denotes a sharp and perceptive interest. Now, anxious introduces a different flavor to desire.
Ah, yes. Here's where desire gets a bit complicated, wouldn't you say?
Definitely.
The desire is still there, strong even, but it brings apprehension with it. Worry.
That's it. Anxious suggests earnest desire, but emphasizes fear of frustration, failure, or disappointment. Its antonym is loath.
So, being anxious to know that they got home safely,
Yeah.
it means you truly earnestly want them home, but you're worried sick about what might have happened.
Yeah.
The positive desire is tainted by that negative undertone.
That's the negative undertone exactly. The earnest desire is there, but it's accompanied by a sense of unease or worry about the outcome. It's the internal conflict, wanting something badly, but being simultaneously burdened by the potential for things to go wrong.
Okay. And finally, for this group, a thirst.
A thirst.
That sounds very vivid, almost poetic. Like a deep, unquenchable craving for something abstract, maybe.
It is. A thirst means moved by a strong and urgent desire or interest, specifically implying intense eagerness for action.
Intense eagerness for action.
It's a powerful, almost visceral term. Emphasizes a deep, unquenchable thirst for something abstract like knowledge, justice, or, as you said, adventure. It conjures a powerful image of deep yearning.
So, a thirst for adventure on her first trip to India really captures that deep, intense yearning for an experience, a craving that drives action.
Absolutely. And what's truly fascinating here with eager, avid, keen, anxious, and a thirst is how they aren't just synonyms for wanting.
No, they're much more specific.
They chart a precise path from simple enthusiasm to deep, sometimes fearful longing or even insatiable craving. Choosing one over another subtly shifts the emotional weight of a sentence.
It allows you to convey the precise flavor of desire you intend. Paints a far more accurate emotional portrait.
Exactly. It's like having a full paint palette just for emotion.
That's so true.
Oh.
Okay, now let's shift to the more unsettling side of emotions. Discomfort and confusion. We have a whole host of words here that describe different gradients of feeling flustered or thrown off. It's not just feeling bad, it's about how you're feeling bad, right?
Yeah.
The specific texture of it.
Indeed. Let's start with embarrass. This is probably the most common one we encounter daily.
Embarrass.
Yeah.
Feels like a general sense of being awkward, maybe a bit red-faced,
Yeah.
self-conscious.
It does. It implies some influence that impedes thought, speech, or action.
Impedes. Okay.
It's a general sense of being flustered or awkward where something gets in the way of your normal function. It often relates to social situations or personal feelings, a kind of internal friction.
Like being embarrassed to admit that she liked the movie.
Yeah.
It's a feeling that makes you hesitate, maybe blush, struggle with words because you're self-conscious about it.
Precisely. It's an internal state of awkwardness. Next up, discomfort.
Discomfort. That sounds a bit stronger to me, like being actively disrupted or thrown for a loop. So less internal awkwardness, maybe more external disruption.
You've got it. It implies a hampering or frustrating accompanied by confusion.
Hampering, frustration,
Yeah.
confusion. Got it.
This is a more active sense of being thrown off, often by external factors that cause confusion. The focus is on the interruption and the resulting disarray, preventing one from operating smoothly.
So persistent heckling discomfited the speaker. That perfectly illustrates it.
Oh, so?
While the external actions, the heckling, actively throw the speaker off their game, causing both frustration and confusion, breaking their stride.
Exactly. It's less about personal awkwardness, maybe, and more about external factors causing a breakdown in composure, a sense of being routed or defeated in the moment.
Okay. The bash.
A bash?
That feels like a sudden sharp blow to one's confidence, like being caught completely off guard.
It does. A bash presupposes some initial self-confidence that receives a sudden check
A sudden check.
by something that produces shyness, shame, or inferiority. Its antonyms, interestingly, are embolden and reassure.
Oh, okay.
This word highlights a sudden fall from confidence, a feeling of being unexpectedly put in one's place, often quite acutely.
Completely abashed by her swift and cutting retort.
Yeah.
That's a powerful image. Someone's confidence just evaporating in the face of a sharp remark, leaving them feeling small or foolish.
It emphasizes that sudden, often sharp, jolt to one's self-assuredness, leaves them quieted or ashamed. Next, disconcert.
Disconcert. Feels like a general unease, just being thrown off balance, but perhaps not as harshly as a bash. More unsettling.
You're sensing the nuance well. It implies an upsetting of equanimity or assurance producing uncertainty or hesitancy.
Upsetting of equanimity.
Okay, it describes a general feeling of unease or being thrown off balance, which often leads to uncertainty or hesitation in action, a kind of unsettling disturbance.
Like being disconcerted by the sight of the large audience. That captures that feeling of being a bit unsettled, causing one to falter or pause before they begin. A loss of smooth confidence.
Yes, it's about a loss of composure that impacts certainty and smooth operation. Then there's rattle.
Rattle. Ooh, that sounds like a complete mental shakeup, almost like your thoughts are physically jumbled inside your head.
It does, doesn't it? Rattle implies a disorganizing agitation that impairs thought and judgment and undermines normal poise and composure.
Disorganizing agitation impairs thought and judgment. Wow.
This is stronger than disconcert. It suggests a significant loss of mental composure and a diminished ability to think clearly. Your mind feels jumbled and unfocused.
The example, a tennis player, not at all rattled by television cameras, used in the negative, perfectly shows that resistance.
Right.
If they were rattled, their game would literally fall apart because their judgment would be impaired.
It highlights a significant impact on mental faculty and performance, a real discombobulation. Finally, for this group, phase.
Phase. Yeah, you often hear that in the negative, don't you? Like, unfazed. Nothing can get to you.
Correct. Phase, which is found chiefly in negative phrases, suggests a loss of assurance or equanimity, often sudden and thorough.
Sudden and thorough loss.
Okay.
So being unfazed implies being completely resistant to something that would typically cause distress or a loss of composure. Shows remarkable resilience to being disturbed.
Like a veteran teacher phased by nothing.
Means they're so experienced, no matter how chaotic the classroom gets, nothing can throw them off their stride. They just take it all in, unshakable.
Exactly. It speaks to a deep, often sudden resistance to being disturbed. So what's fascinating about all these embarrass, discomfit, abash, disconcert, rattle, and phase is how they really describe a gradient of mental disquiet.
Yeah, whole spectrum.
From mild social awkwardness, embarrass, to active hampering and confusion, discomfort, a sudden loss of confidence, abash, a general unease, disconcert, and finally, a complete disorganization of thought, rattle.
Choosing the right word lets you pinpoint the exact nature and intensity of the discomfort.
Which is incredibly useful for navigating social situations, writing believable characters, or even just understanding your own reactions better.
That's a truly comprehensive look at emotional distress. Okay, moving to a more positive emotional spectrum now. Let's explore courage and resolve. How do we distinguish between simply cheering someone on and, instilling deep-seated bravery?
This is a great set of words. They illustrate how we can empower others, not just with a quick pat on the back, but sometimes really from within. Let's start with encourage.
Encourage. Seems like the most general term, right? Just boosting someone's spirits, the simplest form of lifting someone up.
Yes, it suggests the raising of one's confidence, especially by an external agency. Its antonym is discourage.
External agency. So it comes from outside.
Usually, yes. It's about a general boosting of morale that comes from an outside source, providing support or praise to help someone feel more confident.
Like the teacher's praise encouraged the student to try even harder. Simple, direct, effective. A basic motivator.
Exactly. It's a foundational act of positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
Then we have in spirit.
In spirit. It
Mhm.
sounds more profound, doesn't it?
Oh,
Like infusing something with life or a new spirit. More than just a pep talk then.
definitely more. It implies the instilling of life, energy, courage, or vigor into something. Its antonym is dispirit.
Instilling life, energy, courage, vigor.
Okay. This is a more profound infusion of spirit. Making something or someone vibrant and ready for action. It's about breathing life into something that might have been dormant or lacking in vitality. A deeper, more transformative kind of encouragement.
So, pioneers inspirited by the stirring accounts of the explorers.
Yeah.
That paints a picture of people not just gaining confidence, but being filled with a renewed sense of purpose and energy that really drives them to act.
It's a deeper, more transformative kind of encouragement, almost a spiritual uplift sometimes. Next, hearten.
Hearten. That always makes me think of someone who is really down, maybe dispirited, being lifted up from that specific state.
You're spot on. Hearten implies the lifting of a dispiritedness or despondency by an infusion of fresh courage or zeal. Its antonym is dishearten.
Lifting dispiritedness or despondency.
This word specifically addresses lifting someone from a state of low spirits or despair, providing a renewed sense of hope and drive. It directly counteracts discouragement.
A hospital patient heartened by the display of moral support. That's a perfect example. It addresses a specific state of being down and lifts them out of it, giving them back their will, their heart.
It highlights a targeted act of emotional revival, specifically for someone who is feeling disheartened. Finally, embolden.
Embolden. This implies giving someone the courage to overcome timidity or reluctance, right? That courage to overcome hesitation.
Yes, embolden implies the giving of courage sufficient to overcome timidity or reluctance. And remember its antonym.
Ah,
Abash. Exactly. Abash, which we just discussed as a sudden blow to confidence. Embolden directly addresses overcoming fear or hesitation, enabling someone to take a bold step they might otherwise have avoided due to shyness or apprehension.
so a successful climb emboldened her to try more difficult ones. That specific success gave her the courage to push past her apprehension and take on bigger, scarier challenges. Made her bold.
Precisely. So what's fascinating about encourage, inspirit, hearten, and embolden is how they distinguish between generally cheering someone on, encourage, and specifically overcoming deep-seated fear, embolden, or despondency, hearten, or even breathing new life into something in spirit.
They allow us to articulate not just the presence of support, but the precise nature of the internal shift it causes in the person receiving it.
Whether it's general confidence, a new lease on life, a lift from despair, or the bravery to finally act.
From boosting courage, let's delve into the opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Deep-seated dislike.
Ah, yes. The dark side.
It's not just I don't like it. There are so many intense nuances to true animosity. It's a whole spectrum of negativity.
Absolutely. And the subtleties here are profound. It's about differentiating between a mere distaste and something truly virulent. Let's begin with enmity.
Enmity. So that sounds fundamental. Like I say to being an enemy, a truly deep-seated opposition, not just a fleeting feeling.
It does. Enmity suggests positive hatred which may be open or concealed. Its antonym is amity.
Positive hatred, open or concealed.
It describes a fundamental, often long-standing state of being an enemy, a deep-seated antagonism. It's often a pervasive feeling rather than a singular act.
An unspoken enmity seethed between the two. That's a powerful image of concealed but very real hatred, a constant undercurrent.
Indeed. It's a deep underlying state of opposition, a settled feeling. Closely related is hostility.
Hostility feels more active to me, more overt. So is it like enmity in action?
Precisely. It suggests a strong, open enmity showing itself in attacks or aggression.
Show itself in attacks. Okay.
So hostility is enmity expressed through overt actions, through antagonism or conflict. It's the active manifestation of that underlying animosity.
A history of hostility between the two nations clearly implies past conflicts or aggressive acts, not just bad feelings simmering beneath the surface.
It's the active manifestation, often leading to conflict. Next, antipathy.
Antipathy. That makes me think of a natural aversion, almost an instinctive dislike, like oil and water.
Good analogy. It implies a natural or logical basis for one's hatred or dislike. suggesting repugnance or a desire to avoid or reject. Its antonyms are taste for and affection for.
Natural logical basis. Repugnance.
This is a strong aversion based on an intrinsic incompatibility, something fundamental about the two entities that simply clashes. It's less about active aggression and more about a visceral opposition or rejection.
Like a natural antipathy for self-important upstarts. It's almost a gut reaction, right? An innate dislike for a certain type of person or behavior.
It suggests an inherent clash of natures, a deep-seated incompatibility. Then there's antagonism.
Antagonism. That sounds like two forces directly opposing each other, maybe actively working against each other, like a simmering feud.
It suggests a clash of temperaments leading readily to hostility. Its antonyms are accord and comedy.
Clash of temperaments leading to hostility.
Antagonism describes a dynamic, often reciprocal opposition that can easily escalate into open conflict. It's about a fundamental opposition that primes for conflict, often a war of wills or personalities.
You see this in politics sometimes.
Absolutely, where it's less about policy and more about that deep-seated reciprocal opposition that's antagonism in action.
A long-standing antagonism between the banker and his prodigal son. You can practically feel the tension there, can't you?
You can.
It's not just a disagreement. It's a fundamental clash of personalities that's always on the verge of erupting.
It's the fertile ground from which hostility can spring, often fueled by opposing natures. Now, animosity.
Animosity. Ooh, that always sounds very intense, like it could lead to something destructive, dangerous even.
It does. Animosity suggests anger, intense ill will, and vindictiveness that threaten to hurt or destroy. Its antonym is goodwill.
Anger, intense ill will, vindictiveness, threaten to hurt or destroy. Wow.
This is a very strong, often destructive form of ill will, frequently coupled with a desire for revenge or to inflict harm.
Animosity that eventually led to revenge. That's a clear escalation, showing the destructive potential of this level of ill will. It implies a true desire for harm.
It's ill will with a clear, dangerous, and often vengeful edge. Next, rancor.
Rancor. That stresses bitterness and grudges, doesn't it? A bitterness that just won't fade. It festers.
It stresses bitter brooding or the nursing of a grudge or grievance. Rancor describes a lingering, deeply held resentment that festers over time, often unexpressed but deeply felt, poisoning one's outlook and interactions.
Rancor filled every line of his letters. That paints a vivid picture of simmering, long-held bitterness being poured onto the page, affecting every word.
It's the deep, unyielding resentment that corrodes from within. Finally, animus.
Animus, that feels like strong, biased ill will, maybe fueled by prejudice?
Precisely. It implies strong prejudice and often malevolent or spiteful ill will. Its antonym is favor.
Strong prejudice, malevolent or spiteful.
Animus describes a biased, often unfair, malevolent feeling or intention towards someone, frequently rooted in prejudice or a deep-seated irrational dislike, often leading to unfair judgment or actions.
So saying, my objections are devoid of any personal animus, clarifies that the objections are rational, based on facts.
Right.
Not driven by unfair or spiteful personal feelings or biases.
Exactly. So what's truly insightful here is the progression from a general underlying dislike in enmity to its active expression in hostility, then to intrinsic incompatibility in antipathy, a dynamic clash of temperaments in antagonism.
Yeah.
Then you get the burning anger and destructive intent in animosity, long-held, festering grudges and rancor, and finally strong, often biased prejudice in animus.
Wow. These words allow you to precisely dissect and map the emotional intensity and underlying causes of various forms of dislike.
Offering a far more nuanced understanding than just saying hate or dislike.
That's incredibly insightful. It shows just how many shades of dislike there really are and how choosing the right word can convey so much more than just the surface emotion. Okay, let's shift gears from the internal world of emotions. Let's talk about describing the sheer scale of the external world around us. Because saying something is simply big often feels, well, lazy. It misses the true mark.
It's a wasted opportunity for precision, absolutely. The nuances between words for large allow us to convey different facets of immensity, from the abnormally enormous to the ponderously massive. Let's start with enormous.
Enormous. That always implies something beyond ordinary, doesn't it? Like shockingly big.
Yes. Enormous suggests an exceeding of all ordinary bounds in size or amount or degree.
Exceeding all ordinary bounds.
And often as an implication of abnormality or monstrousness. Its antonym is tiny, so it's beyond merely large. It suggests something unusually, surprisingly, or even unwieldy or problematic in its scale, almost daunting.
Like the enormous expense of the program.
Yeah.
It's not just a large expense, it's abnormally or excessively large. Perhaps even daunting or overwhelming. You can feel the weight of it in the word.
Precisely. It often carries a connotation of being overwhelming or unmanageable. Next, immense.
Immense. That feels like something difficult to fully grasp, almost limitless in scope, like trying to wrap your head around it.
It implies size far in excess of ordinary measurements or accustomed concepts.
Far in excess of ordinary measurements.
Immense focuses on a magnitude that is difficult to grasp or quantify with usual standards. It evokes a sense of vastness that overwhelms perception, often associated with concepts like space or time or anything truly boundless.
So, the immense size of the new shopping mall makes it sound like a sprawling, almost incomprehensible structure. Goes beyond what you typically expect from a building.
It suggests a scale that challenges normal expectations, almost infinite in its reach. Then there's huge.
Huge.
Okay.
That's probably the most common straightforward one for very large. Just sheer quantity or physical mass.
It is huge, commonly suggests an immensity of size, bulk, or capacity. It's a straightforward term for very large, emphasizing volume or physical presence in a less abstract way than immense. It's about impressive physical magnitude.
Quickly incurred a huge debt. Here, it simply emphasizes the significant amount, right? The sheer volume of the debt.
Exactly.
Doesn't necessarily imply it's monstrous or incomprehensible, just very, very big.
Yes, it's about sheer quantity or physical mass. Next, vast.
Vast. Yeah, that always makes me think of wide open spaces. Immense distances, steppes, oceans, deserts.
That's a good intuition. Vast
Wow.
suggests extreme largeness or broadness and immensity of extent.
Largeness or broadness. Immensity of extent.
It emphasizes expansive area, particularly in geographical or abstract contexts. Evokes a sense of unlimited space, especially in horizontal dimensions.
The vast Russian steppes. That's a perfect image of an immense, sprawling landscape that seems to go on forever horizontally.
It speaks to breadth and unlimited extent. Now, gigantic.
Gigantic. That clearly stresses a contrast with others of the same kind. It stands out from the crowd because of its size.
Exactly. Gigantic stresses the contrast with the size of others of the same kind. It implies being unusually large compared to its peers, or the expected size for its category. Standing out disproportionately, it's about a dramatic difference in scale.
So if you say a gigantic tree among saplings, it highlights its exceptional size in comparison to its surroundings, or the classic, a gigantic leap for mankind, implying a monumental step forward compared to previous advancements.
That's it. It defines by comparison, making it noteworthy and truly exceptional. Then there's colossal.
Colossal. That sounds like something truly astonishing, monumental, maybe even awe-inspiring.
It applies especially to something of stupendous or incredible dimensions.
Stupendous or incredible dimensions.
Wow.
Colossal denotes a size that is astonishing, almost beyond belief, often associated with monuments, great achievements, or anything of truly awesome, almost unbelievable scale. It evokes a sense of wonder, of awe.
A colossal statue of Lincoln. That image immediately conveys a sense of awe. Not just big, but incredibly impressively, almost impossibly big. It implies something almost overwhelming in its magnitude, bordering on the unbelievable. Finally, mammoth.
Mammoth. Definitely implies weight and unwieldiness along with the size.
Yeah.
Big and heavy, often slow-moving.
Mammoth suggests both hugeness and ponderousness of bulk.
Hugeness and ponderousness.
It conveys not just size, but also weight, unwieldiness, or slow, powerful movement, often with a sense of immense solidity and difficulty to move.
A mammoth boulder. That paints a picture of a massive, heavy, unmovable object.
Yeah.
Difficult to even contemplate shifting it.
Exactly. So what's truly insightful here is how selecting the right word enriches description, painting a far more specific mental picture than just big.
Yeah, definitely.
Whether you're describing physical objects, abstract concepts like expenses, or geographical expanses, these words allow for a truly nuanced understanding of scale. Turns a simple descriptor into a vibrant image.
It's incredible how much a single word can convey beyond just its surface definition. Okay, now that we've explored magnitude, let's turn our attention to the act of removal and release, how we define different methods and purposes of separating, eliminating, or freeing something. It's not just about getting rid of something, but how and why.
This is another area where precision is paramount. The method, intent, and outcome of removal can vary dramatically. These words clarify the specific nature of disengagement. Let's start with words describing forcing out. First, eject.
Eject, yeah, implies a forceful, immediate expulsion, often from an enclosed space, like an ejection seat.
Good visual. It carries an especially strong implication of throwing or thrusting out from within. Its antonym is admit. Eject often implies a forceful, immediate expulsion from an enclosed space, often done rapidly and perhaps without much ceremony or warning.
Ejected the obnoxious patron from the bar.
Classic example.
That's a swift, forceful removal from an inside space, usually in response to immediate behavior. Get out.
Exactly. It's usually a reactive in-the-moment removal. Next, expel.
Expel. That sounds more formal and maybe permanent than eject. More official, less spontaneous.
It stresses a voluntary, often permanent thrusting out or driving away. Its antonym is also admit.
Voluntary, often permanent.
Expel implies a deliberate, official, and usually permanent removal, often as a punishment or a policy decision, like from an organization or a country.
A student expelled from college. That clearly indicates a formal, disciplinary, and typically permanent removal from that institution. Rules were broken.
It's a calculated, often punitive act with long-term consequences. Then oust.
Oust. That makes me think of someone being removed from power or a position, like a coup.
It often carries that connotation. It implies removal or dispossession by a power of the law, by force, or by compulsion of necessity.
Removal or dispossession, by power or force.
Oust refers to a formal or forceful removal from a position, power, or property, often through legal or political means, signifying a loss of status or control.
Issued a general order ousting all foreigners. That's a large-scale authoritative removal based on policy or force, changing the very composition of a place.
It speaks to a significant shift in status or presence due to external power, often involving political or legal leverage. Now, evict.
Evict. That one's definitely tied to housing, isn't it? A very specific kind of forcing out landlords and tenants.
Chiefly, yes. Evict applies to a turning out of house and home by a legal or comparable process. It is specific to residential or tenancy situations, implying a legal process for removal.
Usually for non-payment of rent or breaking the lease.
Right.
Evicted for non-payment of rent is the classic example, highlighting the legal specific nature of this type of forcing out. A very particular process.
It's a very particular legal mechanism for removing someone from a dwelling. Lastly, in this group, dismiss.
Dismiss. Okay, this could be used for people, like being fired,
Yeah.
but also for ideas or feelings, right? So not always a physical removal.
That's a key point. It implies getting rid of something unpleasant or troublesome by refusing to consider it further.
Refusing to consider it further.
Okay. While it can refer to people, like dismissing an employee, its broader use emphasizes a conscious mental rejection or disregard for something, setting it aside, choosing not to be bothered by it anymore.
Simply dismiss the quarrel from her mind. That's a mental act of removal.
Yeah.
Setting something aside to no longer be troubled by it, a conscious choice to disengage mentally.
Exactly. So what's fascinating about eject, expel, oust, evict, and dismiss is how they illuminate the legal, social, and personal implications.
Yeah, they each have their own context.
They highlight the specific circumstances, the actors involved, and the formality or lack thereof in each type of forcing out. This range lets us pinpoint not just that something was removed, but the full story behind how it happened.
That's a great distinction. It's not just about getting rid of something, but the how and the why. Okay, now let's talk about erasing and annihilating, making things disappear completely.
From a light touch to total annihilation. This group of words describes different degrees of removal or destruction, from reversible acts to total obliteration. It's about the ultimate removal, and each word hints at the target and method. First, erase.
Erase. The most straightforward, I think. Like with a pencil erasure, often with the intention of correction. Simple, often reversible.
Yes. It implies the act of rubbing or wiping out, as of letters or impressions, often in preparation for correction or replacement by new matter. It's a physical act of removal, often with the intent to make room for something new or to correct something.
Erase what you wrote and start over. Clear, simple, a common act of revision, usually quite temporary or fixable.
Exactly. It's often temporary or a preliminary step. Next, expunge.
Expunge. Ooh, that sounds much more complete, much more final, like leaving no trace behind, as if it never existed.
It stresses a removal or destruction that leaves no trace.
Leaves no trace.
Expunge implies a more thorough, often official removal that aims for complete oblivion. As if something never existed or was entirely forgotten, it's about total erasure from records or memory.
Expunged all references to the deposed leader. That's a powerful act of historical erasure, isn't it? Aiming to leave no record, to make them disappear from the official narrative.
It signifies a deliberate attempt at absolute traceless removal, then cancel.
Cancel. This implies nullifying something, making it invalid, voiding something out.
It implies an action, like marking, revoking, or neutralizing, that nullifies or invalidates a thing. Cancel means to void or render something ineffective, often by a counteraction or a formal declaration, makes it no longer valid or in effect.
A crime that canceled all her good deeds. Here it nullifies the positive effect of past actions, almost as if they never happened in the face of the new transgression.
It's about rendering something void as if it were undone. Now, efface.
Efface. That makes me think of something wearing away gradually, or being removed from a surface like an inscription on stone, worn away over time.
It implies the removal of an impression, imprint, or image by damage to or elimination of the surface on which it appears, or removal of every visible sign of its existence.
Removal by damage to the surface.
Okay. Efface describes a gradual wearing away or a deliberate removal of superficial markings, often by damaging the surface itself, removing all visible signs.
Coins with dates effaced by wear. That's a great visual.
Sure.
Shows the gradual disappearance of information due to friction in time.
It speaks to the slow erosion or deliberate superficial removal. Next, obliterate.
Obliterate. That sounds like total destruction, wiped out, leaving nothing behind. Nothing left at all.
It implies a covering up or smearing over or utter destruction that removes all traces of a thing's existence.
Utter destruction. Removes all traces.
Obliterate signifies a very complete destruction, often leaving no remnants whatsoever, a total removal of presence, as if something has been wiped from the face of the earth.
An outdoor mural almost obliterated by graffiti. That's a powerful image of something being almost entirely wiped out by an overwhelming, defacing force. Destroyed beyond recognition.
It's destruction to the point of unrecognizability or even disappearance. Closely related, blot out.
Blot out. Also sounds like obscuring something, maybe deliberately, making it indecipherable, making it unreadable or unseen.
Like obliterate, blot out suggests a rendering of something indecipherable or non-existent by smearing over or hiding completely. It often implies intentional obscuring or hiding.
Smearing over or hiding.
Making something illegible or forgotten through concealment, often with ink or darkness.
Blotted out the offensive passage with black ink. That's a deliberate act of covering up to make something unreadable or invisible. Censor it.
It's about intentional concealment leading to non-existence, in effect. Finally, delete.
Delete. Very precise, intentional, especially with written matter or digital information. Targeted, specific removal, like hitting the delete key.
It implies a deliberate exclusion or a marking to direct exclusion of written matter. Delete is a precise, intentional removal of specific content, usually from text or data, aiming for exact excision, often in a digital context now, as you say.
His editor deleted all unflattering references to others. It's a targeted act of removal from a document, ensuring specific content is gone. Clean it up.
Exactly. So what's remarkable here is how these words erase, expunge, cancel, efface, obliterate, blot out, and delete contrast the permanency, the method, and the intent of these actions.
Yeah, it's a whole scale of disappearance.
From simple, reversible corrections to actions that aim for complete oblivion, expunge, obliterate, they offer a precise vocabulary for describing how things are removed or cease to exist. Illuminates the nuance of vanishing.
It's about the nuance of vanishing, isn't it? From a light touch to total annihilation. Okay, now let's pivot to clearing someone from blame. This is important too. There's a significant difference between just excusing someone and fully vindicating them, right?
Absolutely. This set of words highlights varying degrees of clearance, from merely overlooking a fault to formally proving innocence. Each word carries specific legal, moral, or social implications. Let's start with exculpate.
Exculpate. That implies clearing someone from blame or a burden, essentially proving they aren't at fault for something specific.
Yes. It implies a clearing from blame or burden. Its antonym is accuse. Exculpate focuses on proving someone innocent of fault, often by providing evidence or an explanation that removes the imputation of guilt.
I cannot exculpate myself of the charge of overenthusiasm.
Okay.
This means you can't prove yourself innocent of being too enthusiastic. It's almost like a confession that the charge holds water, you were over-enthusiastic.
Right. It's about being freed from an imputation of guilt through explanation or evidence or acknowledging you can't be. Next, absolve.
Absolve. That makes me think of moral or religious forgiveness, or being released from an obligation like an oath. It feels more profound maybe than just exculpate.
It implies a release either from an obligation that binds the conscience or from the consequences of its violation. Its antonyms are hold to and charge with.
Release from obligation,
Yeah.
or consequences.
Absolve is more about forgiveness or remission of guilt or duty, often with a moral or religious connotation. Freeing one from a binding moral constraint or responsibility.
Absolve the subject from his oath of allegiance. That's a release from a very serious obligation, a moral or legal bond, freeing them from a prior commitment.
It's a liberation from a sense of duty or wrongdoing, often by an authority figure, then exonerate.
Exonerate. That feels like a complete clearance, usually after an investigation or trial. Total vindication, often formal and public.
It implies a complete clearance from an accusation or charge and from any attendant suspicion of blame or guilt. Its antonym is incriminate.
Complete clearance. And from suspicion, too.
Exonerate is a formal declaration of complete innocence, often after a thorough investigation. It removes all suspicion and establishes their blamelessness beyond doubt.
A committee exonerated the governor from charges of bribery. This means they were found completely innocent,
Yeah.
and all suspicion was lifted, officially and publicly. Case closed.
It's a comprehensive clearance of both the charge and the lingering doubt, now acquit.
Acquit. Definitely a legal term, like a court verdict of not guilty. Purely legal.
It implies a decision in one's favor with respect to a definite charge. Its antonym is convict. Acquit is specific to legal settings representing a formal verdict of not guilty by a jury or judge in a criminal trial.
Acquitted of murder by a jury. That's the definitive legal outcome for innocence in the eyes of the law for that specific charge.
It's a formal legal finding of not guilty. Finally, vindicate.
Vindicate. Okay, this always feels like proving someone was right all along, despite being criticized or accused. More than just not guilty, it's proving the truth or justification of your position or actions.
That's a key element. It may refer to things as well as persons that have been subjected to critical attack or imputation of guilt, weakness, or folly.
Things as well as persons.
Okay.
And implies a clearing through proof of the injustice or unfairness of such criticism or blame.
Clearing through proof of injustice. Vindicate means proving someone or something was right or justified despite criticism or attack, showing the initial criticism was unfair or unfounded. It's about being proven correct in the face of doubt or opposition.
An investigation vindicated their claims. This means the claims were proven true and just, despite earlier doubts, accusations, or attacks, establishes their accuracy or righteousness.
Exactly. So what stands out here is how these words exculpate, absolve, exonerate, acquit, and vindicate address different contexts: moral, legal, or reputational.
And different levels of clearance.
Right. They also imply varying levels of proof involved in clearing someone's name, from simply shedding blame, exculpate, to fully proving the truth of their position against all criticism, vindicate. Choosing the right one allows you to accurately convey the depth and nature of the clearance.
This is truly a masterclass in linguistic precision. Okay, from clearing names, let's explore the different ways things can be destroyed completely.
The methods of annihilation?
It's more than just getting rid of, isn't it? It's about the very nature of that annihilation. The thoroughness.
It's about the ultimate removal, yes. And each word hints at the target and method of that destruction, from swift killing to preventing future existence. First, exterminate.
Exterminate.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me think of pests, insects. Quick and total killing off of a population. Ruthless.
It implies complete and immediate extinction by killing off. Exterminate focuses on the swift, total destruction of a population, often applied to living organisms, with a direct intent to kill every last one.
Failed attempts to exterminate the mosquitoes. That's a direct effort to kill off an entire population, leaving none alive.
It implies a complete lethal eradication. Next, extirpate.
Extirpate. That sounds more profound somehow, like removing the very means of propagation so it can never come back, getting rid of the roots.
Exactly. It implies extinction of a race, family, species, kind, or sometimes an idea or doctrine by destruction or by removal of its means of propagation.
Removal of its means of propagation. Okay.
Extirpate suggests a more profound, often systemic removal that prevents regeneration, ensuring something can never return or flourish again because its source is gone.
Having extirpated the last vestiges of the religion. That's not just killing individuals, but destroying the very foundation and means of its continuation. wiping it from history.
It's about rooting out so thoroughly that no trace or possibility of resurgence remains. Then eradicate.
Eradicate. This often comes up with diseases like polio or maybe social problems that are deeply entrenched, driving out something established.
It implies the driving out or elimination of something that has taken root or established itself firmly. Eradicate focuses on rooting out something deeply entrenched, often a problem, a disease, or a persistent issue, by getting rid of its underlying causes or structures.
Polio had virtually been eradicated. This suggests a massive concerted effort to completely eliminate a deep-seated problem worldwide, removing it from existence by tackling its roots.
It's about overcoming a deeply established entity or problem, removing its presence entirely. Now, uproot.
Uproot clearly implies displacement, often forcibly, rather than immediate destruction. Displacing, not necessarily destroying immediately.
It implies a forcible or violent removal, and stresses displacement or dislodgement rather than immediate destruction. Its antonym is establish.
Forcible removal stresses displacement.
Uproot emphasizes displacement and disruption, often applied to people or things with roots, literal or figurative. It implies a loss of their original place or foundation, creating a state of instability or homelessness.
The war had uprooted thousands. This vividly conveys the forced displacement of people from their homes, leaving them without a settled place, adrift.
It focuses on forceful dislodgement and the resulting instability. Lastly, wipe out.
Wipe out feels very general, but also very complete, like a broad total elimination. Can apply to many things.
It can imply extermination or suggest a canceling or obliterating. Wipeout is a general, often forceful term for total elimination or destruction, whether physical or conceptual. It's broad but conveys finality and comprehensiveness, like a clean sweep.
Wipe out the entire population. That's a devastating total destruction of life, using a common but powerful phrase.
Indeed. So what's clear from exterminate, extirpate, eradicate, uproot, and wipeout is how they delineate different targets: biological, conceptual, physical, and methods of complete destruction.
They highlight the varying degrees of finality.
And the means by which something ceases to exist, painting a more precise picture of absolute removal.
From total destruction, let's turn to freeing from binding. We don't just free something. There are specific ways we release things from difficult situations, entanglements, or burdens. It's about the method of release, isn't it?
Yeah.
What it's being released from.
Exactly. This group of words clarifies the specific nature of what is binding or holding something back, and the effort required to release it. From intricate untangling to shedding burdens. Let's start with extricate.
Extricate.
Yeah.
Yeah, that always sounds like a complex problem needing ingenuity or significant effort to get out of. Needs cleverness or force, I think both.
It implies the use of force or ingenuity in freeing from a difficult position or situation. Extricate focuses on active effort, requiring cleverness or strength to release from a complex bind or tricky predicament where one is caught or entangled.
A knack for extricating himself from damaging political rows.
Good example.
This shows a skillful release from a difficult, entangling situation, implying cleverness in getting out of a tight spot, maybe dodging consequences.
It highlights the cleverness and effort involved in the escape. Next, disentangle.
Disentangle. That suggests a painstaking process of separation, like untangling a knotted rope or threads, careful unweaving.
It suggests a painstaking separation of something from what enmeshes or entangles. Its antonym is entangle. Disentangle emphasizes careful, detailed separation from something that is intertwined, often with intricate effort.
Like separating threads or complex facts.
Precisely.
A biography that disentangles the myth from the man. That's a perfect illustration of carefully separating complex, interwoven elements to reveal the truth beneath. Patience required.
It's about careful unweaving, often of complex truths or narratives. Untangle is very similar, often used interchangeably.
Yeah, the dictionary says untangle is sometimes used in place of disentangle. It feels like a slightly more common, perhaps less formal, synonym, like untangling headphones.
Indeed. It's a more common, perhaps slightly less formal, synonym for disentangle, implying a similar process of uncomplicating something knotted or confused, whether physical or abstract.
Untangled a web of deceit. That implies simplifying a complex deception, breaking down its intricate parts to see clearly.
It's about bringing order to confusion, simplifying complexity. Then disencumber.
Disencumber. Makes me think of removing a heavy burden, like shedding a weight or backpack. lightening the load.
It implies a release from something that clogs or weighs down or imposes a heavy burden. Its antonym is encumber. Disencumber focuses on lightening a burden or removing obstacles to freedom of movement or clarity, liberating from something that impedes progress or ease.
A science article disencumbered of scientific jargon.
Ah, yes.
That's freeing the information from the burden of complex language, making it more accessible and easier to understand, removing the weight.
It's about removing an oppressive weight or hindrance. Finally, disembarrass.
Disembarrass. That sounds like releasing from something awkward or socially hindering, freeing from embarrassment or awkward constraints.
It suggests a release from something that embarrasses by impeding or hindering. Disembarrass specifically addresses the removal of something awkward or burdensome that causes social or personal hindrance, allowing for greater ease and freedom from self-consciousness or constraint.
Disembarrassed herself of her frivolous companions. That implies removing herself from a socially awkward or hindering situation, the companions, making her feel less constrained or perhaps less judged.
Exactly. So what's clear here is how these words extricate, disentangle, untangle, disencumber, and disembarrass highlight the specific types of binding or burden each addresses.
From physical knots to social awkwardness.
From physical entanglement and complex situations, extricate, disentangle, to conceptual clutter, disencumber, and social impediments, disembarrass, they provide precise language for different acts of freeing and release.
It really shows how much precision there is in how we talk about letting go or being let go.
Yeah.
Okay, now that we've cleared things up, literally, let's turn our attention to the act of making information clear and understandable.
Ah, the pursuit of clarity.
Because there's more to it than just explaining. There's a whole spectrum of clarity, isn't there?
Yeah.
Different ways to make things understood.
Absolutely. The various words for making clear imply differing degrees of effort, target audience, and the nature of the obscurity being addressed. It's about how deeply and broadly we shed light on something. Let's start with the most common. Explain.
Explain. Yeah, the most general term, isn't it? The fundamental act of making plain. Just telling someone what something means.
Yes. It implies making plain or intelligible what is not immediately obvious or clearly known. Its antonym is obfuscate, which means to make something obscure or unclear.
All right, obfuscate. The opposite.
Explain is the most general term, covering basic clarification of facts, processes, or reasons, making something straightforward.
The doctor explained what the operation would entail. That's a straightforward rendering of complex medical info into understandable terms for a patient. Basic clarity.
It's about demystifying the unknown in a clear, concise way. Next, expound.
Expound. Okay, that sounds more elaborate, more scholarly, almost like a lecture, a deeper, more formal dive.
It implies a careful, often elaborate or learned explanation. Expound suggests a more in-depth, scholarly, or detailed presentation of an idea or theory, often for an attentive audience involving a comprehensive and systematic explanation.
A professor expounding the theory of relativity. That's a thorough, perhaps lengthy, and well-structured explanation aimed at deep understanding, going into significant detail.
It's explanation with depth and authority, often building a case or argument step by step. Then, explicate.
Explicate. That adds to expound the idea of a very detailed analysis, often textual, like unpacking every single layer of meaning. Close reading.
Correct. It adds to expound the idea of a developed or detailed analysis of a topic. Explicate focuses on a very thorough, often textual analysis that breaks down complex ideas, revealing layers of meaning that might not be immediately apparent, often through close reading or interpretation.
A passage that critics have been inspired to explicate at length. This implies a deep line-by-line or concept-by-concept analysis to reveal hidden meanings and full implications, really digging in.
It's about exhaustive, interpretive analysis, pulling out every thread of meaning. No, elucidate.
Elucidate, I like that word. It makes me think of shedding light on something, making it suddenly clear, bringing clarity to darkness or confusion.
It stresses the throwing of light upon as explanation, exposition, or illustration. Elucidate implies shedding light on something that was previously dark or confusing, often through examples, analogies, or very clear presentation, making it suddenly comprehensible and illuminating.
A newspaper report that elucidated the reason for the crime. That report brought clarity and understanding to a previously murky situation, made sense of the mystery, shone a light.
It's about illuminating with clarity, often through simplification or illustrative examples. Finally, interpret.
Interpret. Okay, this feels like it requires more than just knowledge. It needs imagination or special insight going beyond just the facts, translating meaning with a deeper lens.
It adds to explain the implication of the need for imagination or sympathy or special knowledge to make something clear. Interpret goes beyond mere explanation. It involves translating meaning, often from a spiralized or artistic domain.
Like art or dreams or data.
Exactly. Requiring insight and a subjective understanding, bringing out hidden or symbolic meaning.
Interprets the play as an allegory about good and evil. That's not just explaining the plot, it's revealing a deeper symbolic meaning, requiring creative insight, offering a reading.
Precisely. So what's fascinating about explain, expound, explicate, elucidate, and interpret is how they form a spectrum.
Yeah, from basic to profound.
From basic instruction to profound analytical insight, explicate, interpret, they emphasize the role of the explainer's expertise and the inherent complexity of the subject matter. They offer a precise vocabulary for the various ways we make the opaque transparent.
And it's this very act of explaining that Karpman's aims to achieve different levels of clarity. The dictionary also gives us a rich vocabulary for describing what is clear or evident as a result of these efforts. So when we elucidate, for example, what kind of clarity are we aiming for? How do these connect?
Precisely. These terms describe the result of successful explanation, the state of understanding attained. For example, evident implies visible signs which point to a definite conclusion.
Visible signs, okay.
It suggests that evidence is present and undeniable, leading to an obvious conclusion. Like a smoking gun, the evidence is right there.
And manifest is even more obvious, right? It implies an external display so evident that little or no inference is required. Like her manifest joy upon receiving the award. You don't need to guess. It's right there on her face. Undeniable. Written all over it.
Absolutely. No deduction needed. It's self-revealing. Patent applies to a cause, effect, or feature that is clear and unmistakable once attention has been drawn to it.
So it needs to be pointed out first.
Often, yes. It's clear once pointed out, glaringly obvious once you look directly at it.
Then distinct implies such sharpness of outline or definition that no unusual effort to see or hear or comprehend is required.
Very clear boundaries.
Like my offer met with a distinct refusal. It was unequivocal, sharp, no room for misinterpretation, a clear no.
And obvious implies such ease in discovering or accounting for something, suggesting little need for perspicacity in the observer.
Easy to see.
Right? The motives are obvious to all but the most obtuse. It's readily apparent without much thought needed.
Apparent seems a bit different. It says it may imply conscious exercise of elaborate reasoning as well as inference from evidence. Like, the absurdity of the charge is apparent to all who know him. So it might require a bit of thought or prior knowledge, but the conclusion is clearly there for those with the context.
Yes, it might require a bit of thought or specific knowledge, but the conclusion is undeniably there once you consider it properly. And plain is simply simple, direct, and easily understood without embellishment or complexity. Straightforward.
Finally, clear itself, the big one. It implies an absence of anything that confuses the mind or obscures the issues.
Total lack of confusion.
It's clear now what's been going on. All confusion is gone. The picture is sharp.
So the act of explanation, through its various forms, whether explaining, expounding, or elucidating, aims to achieve these different levels of clarity.
Right. They lead to these states.
From making something simply evident through visible signs to rendering it entirely clear by removing all confusion, they represent the successful outcomes of our efforts to communicate effectively.
That's a fantastic way to connect the verbs of explaining to the adjectives of clarity. It makes you realize how intricately linked our vocabulary for understanding is, both in the action and the result. Okay, now let's transition from making things understandable to concepts that describe the fundamental nature of things, from the tangible to the abstract, how we talk about the, existence itself, almost.
This next section dives into how we define intangible qualities, states of being, and inherent characteristics, giving us words to describe the very essence of something. Let's start by looking at worldly versus spiritual. First, earthly.
Earthly. Yeah, clearly implies a contrast with something divine or spiritual, like what's tied to our planet, our mortal lives, versus what's beyond.
It does. Earthly often implies a contrast with what is heavenly or spiritual. It focuses on the tangible, mortal realm in opposition to divine or abstract concerns, grounding something firmly in the physical world, emphasizing its non-spiritual nature.
Abandoned earthly concerns and entered a convent. That's a classic example, illustrating a clear rejection of material or temporal matters for spiritual ones. leaving the world behind.
It signifies a focus on the corporeal and the temporal. Next, mundane.
Mundane.
Yeah.
Okay, that always feels like everyday, ordinary, maybe a bit unexciting. The practical, sometimes boring stuff of life,
Yeah.
day-to-day grind.
It implies a relation to the immediate concerns and activities of human beings and stresses what is transitory and impermanent or practical and ordinary. Its antonym is eternal.
Transitory and impermanent. Practical and ordinary.
Mundane focuses on the everyday, unexciting, and practical aspects of human existence, often with a hint of tedium or banality.
A mundane discussion of finances. That's certainly a very practical, ordinary concern. Perhaps a bit boring for some, but essential to daily life. Not exactly thrilling.
It speaks to the practical, sometimes tedious realities of daily life, emphasizing the commonplace. Then, worldly.
Worldly. This implies a focus on material pleasures and practicalities, but often with a sophisticated or even jaded air, right? A focus on the here and now, but maybe in a knowing, experienced way.
Precisely. Worldly implies indifference to spiritual matters and preoccupation with the mundane and the satisfaction of the appetites. Its antonym is otherworldly.
Indifference to spiritual matters. Satisfaction of appetites.
It suggests a focus on material pleasures and practicalities, often with a connotation of sophistication or jadedness regarding higher ideals, prioritizing the here and now and often implying extensive experience of life's practicalities, someone who's been around.
Nightclub habitués with a worldly air.
Yeah.
They're focused on the immediate gratification and pleasures of life, not lofty ideals, and they seem to have seen it all, perhaps a bit cynical.
Exactly. So what's compelling about earthly, mundane, and worldly is how they delineate different aspects of human experience.
Where our focus lies, really.
From purely physical existence, earthly, to material desires and practicalities, worldly, often contrasted with the everyday routine, mundane, and all set against the backdrop of spiritual pursuits. They provide a nuanced way to describe our orientation in life, where our focus and values truly lie.
It's about where our focus lies, isn't it? That's a good way to put it. Now let's explore the nuances of emptiness. Because an empty bucket is very different from an empty stare.
Absolutely.
And our language captures these distinctions perfectly.
Indeed. These words allow us to specify the kind of absence, whether physical, intellectual, or conceptual. Let's start with the basic one, empty.
Empty. The most general, right? It's a complete lack of contents, nothing inside. Simple.
Yes, it suggests a complete absence of contents. Its antonym is full. It's the most general term for a lack of contents, implying nothing is inside, a basic physical state.
An empty bucket, straightforward, nothing in it, ready to be filled. Can't get much simpler.
Simple and direct. Next, vacant.
Vacant. This implies that something should be there, but isn't. Like an empty chair at a meeting or an apartment between tenants, implies a missing occupant or purpose.
Exactly. Vacant suggests an absence of appropriate contents or occupants. Its antonym is occupied. It implies that something should be present, but isn't, often used for spaces, positions, or roles meant to be filled.
A vacant apartment. It implies that it's unoccupied, usually waiting for a tenant, hinting at a temporary state or a potential to be filled.
It speaks to a lack of a proper occupant or purpose for that space or role. Then blank.
Blank. Okay, that makes me think of a surface without distinguishing features. No expression on a face, no writing on a page, no pictures on a wall.
It stresses the absence of any significant, relieving, or intelligible features on a surface. Blank describes a surface devoid of distinguishing marks, expression, or information, lacking specific content or identifying characteristics.
A blank wall. No pictures, no patterns, just a plain, unadorned surface, waiting for something to appear or just starkly empty.
It's about a lack of detail or expression, an absence of specific content. Now, void.
Void. Ah, this sounds much more profound. Like absolute emptiness, almost existential, a deeper, more abstract nothingness. Like the void of space.
It suggests absolute emptiness as far as the mind or senses can determine. Void implies a more profound, often philosophical or existential emptiness, suggesting a total absence of meaning, substance, or content, often an abyss or a vacuum.
A statement void of meaning. Not just unclear, but completely lacking in sense or significance. An utter absence of substance. Hollow.
It points to a deep, often abstract emptiness, an utter lack. Lastly, vacuous.
Vacuous. Yeah, that always implies a lack of intelligence or thought. Empty-headed, a vacuous smile.
It suggests the emptiness of a vacuum and especially the lack of intelligence or significance. Vacuous specifically implies a lack of intellectual or emotional content, often applied to expressions, ideas, or conversations that are empty-headed or meaningless, devoid of substance or thought.
A vacuous facial expression that immediately tells you there's no thought or emotion behind the eyes. Just an empty stare, suggesting a lack of inner life or understanding.
Precisely. So what's truly interesting here is how empty, vacant, blank, void, and vacuous allow us to convey that emptiness can be physical, spatial, intellectual, or even spiritual.
Yeah, so many kinds of empty.
Our word choice reflects that specific void, providing a much richer description than simply saying nothing there, adds layers of nuance to absence itself.
That's a powerful and precise way to articulate absence. Okay, now let's shift to resilience and adaptability. How do we describe different kinds of flexibility and bounce-back ability, both in literal things and, figuratively for people?
These words help us differentiate how something endures strain and returns to its original state, whether physically or metaphorically, highlighting various forms of giving way and recovery. First, elastic.
Elastic immediately brings to mind stretching and returning to shape, like a rubber band or elastic waistband. Stretch and snap back.
It implies the property of resisting deformation by stretching. Its antonym is rigid. Elastic focuses on the ability to stretch and then return to its original shape, emphasizing its resistance to permanent deformation through extension, a dynamic give and take.
Slacks that come with an elastic waistband. You stretch them, they bounce back, providing a comfortable, adaptable fit. Practical application.
Exactly. It's about stretch and consistent recovery. Next, resilient.
Resilient. Okay, that makes me think of quick recovery after pressure or impact. Often used for people too, right? Bouncing back from adversity. Strong recovery.
It implies the ability to recover shape quickly when the deforming force or pressure is removed. Resilient focuses on quick recovery after being pressed or deformed. And as you said, it's often used metaphorically for people who bounce back from adversity or difficult situations with renewed spirit.
A good running shoe has a resilient inner sole. You step on it, it compresses, and it quickly springs back, ready for the next impact, providing consistent support and cushioning.
It's about prompt recovery from pressure or shock, a robust capacity for rebound, then springy.
Springy. That sounds like it combines ease of yielding with quick return, like a trampoline or a fresh cake. That lively bounce, lightness.
It stresses both the ease with which something yields to pressure and the quickness of its return to original shape. Its antonyms are rigid and springless. Springy emphasizes a noticeable bounce-back quality, often related to lightness and responsiveness, a lively rebound.
The cake is done when the top is springy. You press it lightly, it yields easily, and quickly springs back up. Indicates the perfect texture.
It highlights that lively rebound quality, often indicating freshness or buoyancy. Now, flexible.
Flexible. Okay, this suggests bending without breaking, but not necessarily returning to its original shape automatically, right? Malleable, but might stay bent.
That's a crucial distinction. Flexible applies to something which may or may not be resilient or elastic, but which can be bent or folded without breaking. Its antonym is inflexible.
Bent or folded without breaking.
Flexible focuses purely on the ability to bend without damage, not necessarily on automatically returning to its original form. Emphasizes pliability and adaptability to new shapes.
Flexible plastic tubing. You can bend it, shape it, and it won't snap, but it might stay in the bent position you leave it in. It conforms.
It's about malleability and adaptability to new forms. Finally, supple.
Supple. That sounds very smooth and effortless in its bending, almost graceful, like soft leather or a gymnast's body. Smooth, graceful bending.
It applies to something that can be readily bent, twisted, or folded without any sign of injury. Its antonym is stiff. Supple implies a smooth, effortless ability to bend, often associated with a pleasing texture or feel, and a gracefulness in its movement. Suggests inherent pliancy and ease.
Shoes made of luxurious, supple leather. That leather can be easily manipulated, forming to your foot without resistance, and it feels good to the touch. Reflects its high quality and comfort.
Exactly. So what's truly insightful here is how elastic, resilient, springy, flexible, and supple allow us to explore the practical applications of these distinctions.
From materials to people.
From material science to describing human character and adaptability. They offer a nuanced way to describe how things or people cope with stress, change, and external forces, defining their capacity for give and recovery.
It's fascinating how those specific terms give us such a clear mental image of how something behaves under pressure. Okay, now let's pivot to something we all experience when things go wrong, making mistakes.
Ah, yes, the inevitable.
Because there are many ways to make a mistake, aren't there? From minor slips to grievous blunders, and each carries its own weight, its own implication.
Indeed, these words help us delineate the cause, severity, and implied blame in various kinds of mistakes, allowing for far more precise self-reflection or critique. Let's start with error.
Error. This implies straying from a standard or a right course, like a deviation from a known path or correct procedure. A factual mistake, often.
It suggests the existence of a standard or guide and implies a straying from the right course through failure to make effective use of this. Error is a general deviation from what is correct or expected, often implying a logical misstep or a failure to follow guidelines, a departure from accuracy.
One error in planning lost the battle. This suggests a deviation from correct strategy, a fundamental flaw in judgment or execution, with significant consequences, a critical miscalculation.
It's a departure from correctness or a prescribed method, often with implications of fault. Next, mistake.
Mistake. This sounds less critical than error. Perhaps accidental, more of just an oversight or a misjudgment, less blameworthy.
It implies misconception or inadvertence and usually expresses less criticism than error. Mistake is a less severe term, suggesting an accidental oversight or misunderstanding rather than a fundamental flaw in judgment or planning. It implies less culpability.
Dialed the wrong number by mistake. That's a simple accident, right? Without heavy blame. A momentary slip rather than a deep flaw. Easily done.
It's about inadvertence or a simple misapprehension. Then, blunder.
Blunder. Oh, this definitely sounds like stupidity or ignorance is involved and carries a strong degree of blame. A truly bad, clumsy mistake.
It regularly imputes stupidity or ignorance as a cause and connotes some degree of blame. Blunder is a significant, often embarrassing error caused by a lack of intelligence, thought, or carefulness. It carries a strong negative connotation, implying clumsiness or ineptitude.
A political campaign noted mostly for its series of blunders. This implies a continuous string of stupid or ignorant errors that damaged their reputation, made them look foolish or incompetent.
It highlights a serious, often embarrassing misstep due to a lack of sense or foresight. Now, slip.
Slip, a minor one, right? Often trivial and accidental, like a verbal stumble or a slip of the tongue, a small oops.
It stresses inadvertence or accident and applies especially to trivial but embarrassing mistakes. Slip is a minor, usually unintentional error that is often social or verbal, causes slight embarrassment but generally easily overlooked or forgiven.
During the speech, I made several slips. Just little verbal missteps, maybe saying the wrong word accidentally, not major errors that would derail the whole presentation.
It's a small accidental oversight or lapse. Next, lapse.
Lapse. This feels like forgetfulness or a momentary lack of attention is the cause, a temporary flicker in concentration or memory.
It stresses forgetfulness, weakness, or inattention as a cause. Lapse describes a temporary failure or deviation, often due to a momentary lack of concentration or a weakening of resolve, a brief failure in adherence or memory.
Apart from a few grammatical lapses, the paper is good. Small, momentary failures in adherence to grammatical rules. Not a fundamental lack of understanding, just overlooked.
It points to a temporary failure due to inattention or memory. Finally, faux pas.
Faux pas. Very specific. A mistake in etiquette, the social gaffe, really, breaking an unwritten rule of behavior.
It is applied to a mistake in etiquette. Faux pas is a specific type of social blunder, a breach of accepted manners or customs, often causing social awkwardness or embarrassment, especially in formal or cross-cultural settings.
Committed a grievous faux pas by drinking from the finger bowl. That's a clear social blunder. A violation of dining etiquette that would make everyone squirm. Definitely embarrassing.
A classic example. So, what's significant here is how distinguishing these terms allows for more precise criticism or self-reflection.
Yeah, it helps pinpoint the cause and severity.
It helps us understand whether a mistake was due to carelessness, mistake, slip, ignorance, blunder, inattention, lapse, deviation from standards, error, or a specific social misstep, faux pas. Allows us to pinpoint the exact nature of what went wrong and why.
It truly allows us to tailor our understanding of what went wrong and why, and even how to feel about it or how critical to be. Okay, from missteps, we turn to our final section. The act of assessment and judgment. How we determine value and significance. Because just saying you judged something doesn't tell the whole story.
Exactly. This final set of terms highlights how different words for estimating or judging imply varying degrees of formality, expertise, and purpose in assigning worth or significance. It's about the depth and context of our appraisal. Let's begin with estimate.
Estimate. A preliminary judgment, right? Often without exact data. A quick approximate guess. An educated guess, maybe.
It implies a judgment, considered or casual, that precedes or takes the place of actual measuring or counting or testing out. Estimate is a preliminary or approximate judgment, often made without precise data or formal testing, a kind of informed guess.
Estimated that there were 100 people there. It's a quick informal guess based on observation, not a precise head count, just getting a rough idea.
It's about an approximate assessment, a provisional judgment. Next, appraise.
Appraise. This commonly implies fixing monetary worth, often by an expert, like appraising jewelry or a house. Formal, expert valuation, usually financial.
It commonly implies the fixing by an expert of the monetary work of a thing, but importantly, it may be used of any intent to give a critical judgment. Ah, okay, so not just money.
Not exclusively, though that's common. Appraise suggests a more formal and expert judgment of value, often financial, but also critical in a broader sense, by someone with specific knowledge or authority.
A real estate agent appraised the house. That's a formal, expert assessment of its market value, done with specific criteria and methods.
It denotes an expert's assessment of worth, often for an official or transactional purpose. Then, evaluate.
Evaluate. This feels broader than appraise to me, focusing on quality or intrinsic worth, effectiveness, performance, not just money. Judging quality, not just cash value.
It suggests an attempt to determine either the relative or intrinsic worth of something in terms other than monetary. Evaluate is broader than appraisal, often focused on quality, effectiveness, or comparative merit, not exclusively financial. It's a critical assessment for understanding performance or suitability against certain criteria.
Instructors will evaluate all students' work. This is about judging quality, performance, understanding, not just a dollar amount, how well they've met learning objectives. It's a qualitative assessment of worth or merit against a standard or goal. Next, value.
Value. Seems close to appraise, but maybe also implies expertise and judgment, often about something's inherent worth or importance. The connoisseur's assessment, perhaps?
It comes close to appraise, but does imply expertness of judgment, like appraise, but perhaps more about inherent worth or significance, often from an experienced or appreciative perspective, and not necessarily just monetary. It's often a declaration of a thing's importance or esteem.
A watercolor valued by the donor at $500. Here, the donor, perhaps as the owner or an art connoisseur, applies their expert judgment of its worth based on their knowledge or appreciation, assigning a worth.
It's an expert's pronouncement of worth, often reflecting a personal or informed assessment of significance or desirability. Then, rate.
Rate. Okay, this adds the notion of placing something on a scale, right? Assigning it a specific grade or rank compared to others.
It adds to estimate the notion of placing a thing in a scale of value. Rate involves assigning a grade or ranking based on a comparison or standard, positioning it relative to others, or a defined benchmark.
An actress who is rated highly by her peers. That implies she's placed high on a scale of performance by those who are experts in her field. A formal or informal ranking.
5 stars.
5 stars.
It's about ranking according to a standard or collective opinion. Finally, assess.
Assess. This sounds like a critical appraisal for a specific purpose. Maybe assigning taxable value or understanding damage or figuring out a situation to guide action. Understanding the full picture for action.
It implies a rendering of a critical appraisal for the purpose of assigning a taxable value or for understanding or interpreting or as a guide to action. Assess is a formal, critical analysis for a specific purpose, often involving understanding the impact or condition of something, or assigning a specific value like a tax, often leads to a plan or decision.
Officials are still trying to assess the damage. That's a critical analysis to understand the extent and implications of the damage, which will then guide future action, perhaps for repair or compensation claims, figuring out the scope.
Exactly. So, what's truly insightful about estimate, appraise, evaluate, value, rate, and assess is how choosing the right word precisely reflects the purpose and depth of the judgment being made.
From a quick guess to a deep analysis.
From a quick, casual guess to a formal, expert analysis with specific implications, assess, appraise, these words offer distinct tools for nuanced appraisal. ensuring your evaluations are as precise as possible.
Wow, what a journey we've taken. We've navigated the subtle art of deception, charted complex emotional landscapes, explored the spectrum of size, dissected the nuances of removal and release, pursued clarity in communication, and finally, mastered the art of appraisal.
We covered a lot of ground.
We really did. And each word, as we've seen, carries its own unique baggage of meaning, its own connotation, its own implication. It's so clear that precise language is not just a nicety, it's a powerful tool.
For clarity, for understanding, for truly effective communication.
Absolutely.
And by paying attention to these subtleties, you really can transform how you read, write, and speak.
It makes you a more discerning and impactful communicator, doesn't it? Allowing you to articulate your thoughts with greater accuracy and influence.
Yeah, we really encourage you, our listener, to actively notice and appreciate these distinctions in your daily lives. Turn every conversation, every email, every article you read into an opportunity for greater understanding.
Absolutely. And here's maybe a final thought to mull over.
Okay.
In an age of constant information overload, where clarity is often lost amidst the sheer volume of words,
Yeah, it's overwhelming.
maybe the true power lies not in consuming more words, but in understanding the immense depth and precision already available in the words we have.
Ah, that's interesting. Quality over quantity. Precisely. This allows us to build a more accurate and nuanced picture of the world, one carefully chosen word at a time. It invites you to become a more thoughtful user and interpreter of language,
Discerning the hidden layers of meaning in every sentence you encounter.
and enriching your own capacity to shape understanding.
And on that profound note, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of synonyms and antonyms.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring the incredible power of words.